life is now an ever-present in the modern era. We have telescopes, satellites, probes, and landers, all geared toward achieving that one monumental breakthrough, the discovery of an extraterrestrial life form. And if reports are to be believed, then we're getting closer and closer, with state-backed initiatives like the James Webb superseding even the Hubble in terms of the astronomical detail it can now zoom in on, and with private groups, including Breakthrough Starshot and the Galileo Project, bidding to beat our space agencies by becoming the first to make first contact. But actually, one theory asks, have we seen it all before? Paleo contact, more widely known as the ancient astronauts theory, was fiercely debated throughout much of the second half of the 20th century, particularly in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. That it is still quite contemporary, though, in the wider human history doesn't mean that it's problem-free. In fact, far from it. Ideas on paleo contact, that is, that there was some kind of ancient arrival by aliens to Earth which thereafter shaped human history, are widely labeled as pseudoscience by academics. It's a discussion that's also wrapped up in allegations of prejudice, with it in the past being used by predominantly white Western figures to explain predominantly non-Western ancient structures, as though ancient groups couldn't possibly have built things like the pyramids without alien help, despite now vast evidence that actually they could and they did. Nevertheless, the possibility of paleo contact in its broadest sense is still of interest in some circles, notably science fiction, and in some thought experiments on human life before recorded history, for example. In terms of tangible evidence of humankind pre-10,000 years ago, say, there are dramatically fewer materials to go on. Even our oldest iconic physical structures fall short. The Great Pyramid was built only 4,500 years ago. The first parts of Stonehenge date to only 5,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is thought to be around 12,000 years old. But as we travel further back, the potential ruins and objects and leads become smaller and less certain. As we look back in time before the agricultural revolution, some 13,000 years ago, the human trace becomes even more difficult to follow. There then appears to be a very lengthy blind spot within our own story. And while modern technology does allow us to fill it to some extent, with methods to analyze past atmospheres, for instance, as well as the more traditional study of strata, the era-defining layers of rock and silt embedded into the Earth, it's perhaps little wonder that some make the case for some more outlandish ideas as well. The debate on paleo contact, whether it is or isn't possible and whether it is or isn't likely, really centers on two people, the US astronomer Carl Sagan and the Swiss writer Erich von Däniken. First, in 1963, Sagan published in-depth work in which he analyzed the probability and likelihood of a hypothetical alien group ever having visited Earth at any point in its history. In the paper, Sagan applied the famous Drake equation, a flexible formula for calculating the potential number of alien civilizations, before arriving at a ballpark estimate that there could be up to 1 million intelligent groups in just the Milky Way galaxy alone. Naturally, apply a similar thinking to every other galaxy in the universe, and it's arguably plausible that there could be multi-millions of aliens in total. Sagan then suggested that there was at least some potential for any one of those speculated groups to have traveled to Earth, and then, just through the laws of time and probability, there should be at least a small chance that that might have happened, 1, at a time when humans were here, and 2, in such a way as humans would be able to notice and understand what was happening. Crucially, though, Sagan had continually stressed in the paper and in subsequent interviews that his calculations were all hypothetical, that just because it perhaps could happen doesn't mean that it ever in fact did. Enter Erich von Däniken, who 5 years after Sagan's paper in 1968 published his first major bestseller called Chariots of the Gods. In it, he vehemently argues that ancient visitations, maybe one, maybe many, certainly did happen in his view. In general, the crux of the argument is seemingly wrapped up in that same controversial belief that ancient civilizations can't possibly have achieved things like the building of the pyramids or the creation of the Easter Island Moai statues without alien help. Von Däniken does go further, though, in suggesting that not only buildings and structures, but whole religions and belief systems may have been installed into humankind by a visiting alien race. There are comparisons drawn between biblical angels and descending alien beings, and a general claim that what we've since converted into gods via religion were actually advanced beings from above sometime in our distant past. Von Däniken's book and its many sequels have received constant criticism, however, for everything from suspected plagiarism to a near total lack of evidence. In many cases, the examples that von Daniken draws on have been incontrovertibly proven otherwise. Most famously, 6 years after releasing Chariot of the Gods in 1974, the writer was forced to row back on his claims that the monument known as the Iron Pillar of Delhi in Delhi, India, had been alien-made or influenced. While von Daniken had asserted that the pillar didn't rust, most likely due to some kind of alien know-how, the truth is, and always was, that there actually was evidence of rust on the pillar, as it had aged in an expected and typical way. Given that there are also solid records as to how and when the monument was built as well, von Daniken eventually conceded that he was wrong about it. Similarly, the author's explanation of the Nazca Lines in Peru as being human-made, yes, but only in a bid to attract the attention of an alien race and to persuade them to return to Earth, are considered to be entirely unsubstantiated. In other words, in the view of most scientists who look for proof first of all, they're totally made up. Carl Sagan was reportedly not pleased about how von Daniken had responded to and ran with his original speculative research. Again, Sagan had crunched his numbers through the Drake equation with a purely hypothetical outcome in mind. At no point did he or any of his colleagues outright claim that Earth had been visited by aliens before, let alone that past humans had ever made their acquaintance. That said, and partly due to his 1963 research, Sagan never outright rubbished the idea that it was possible either. And again we return to that massive time frame we encountered at the beginning. With 300,000 years of modern human history to work within, with hundreds of thousands of years of our multi-stranded evolutionary story before then, and with only the last 5,000 years or so committed to any kind of written record, it can feel that if there are advanced civilizations out there, then they've surely had more than enough time to drop by. The specific claims of ancient alien influence over early human societies, however, are being increasingly shown to be unfounded, misguided, and potentially even dangerous. While there are some mysterious elements that remain, we know that humans built the pyramids. While there are plenty of questions as to why human beings would subscribe to gods in the first place, we can trace the birth of religions to social developments at the time. Did ancient humans interact with aliens? All credible research and evidence still says no, they didn't. There could always be time enough to rewind the clock a little more and a little more, however, and particularly with Carl Sagan's original claims in mind. And if we move further back in time to before humans were here under any definition, to the ever-unknowable early Earth, and if we take Sagan's estimations at their highest, with 1 million or so potential alien groups in just this galaxy, could it be that our planet, at least, has interacted with at least one of them? Could Earth's greatest secret be that we're not the first intelligent life forms that it has ever seen? But regardless, on a scale between Sagan